Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to show you something I came up with during our Canadian winter. We get these things here called polar vortexes, where it drops to around minus 30 centigrade, which is around minus 22, I think, in Fahrenheit. It's really, really cold, okay? And baked goods do not do well in this temperature, no matter how much you turn the heat up. So I came up with this method using the Instant Pot, and it works like a charm. Now, if you don't have an Instant Pot, that's just fine. If you got a slow cooker, that will work. If you got a bowl wrapped in a blanket, that'll work. But I'll just make my normal pizza dough quick, and I'll show you, and you'll see what it looks like when it's finished. So here's the recipe. Oh, and if you missed the other video, that's the pizza sauce in the background where the dried vegetables are rehydrating. I always do a sloppy measure. 2 cups or maybe a little bit more, it's fine. And I'd say about a half a teaspoon of sea salt. This again, I don't measure. You might want to if you're worried about precision like that. I just don't put too much, just enough to give it a bit of flavor. And what you do is just get that going. Get the salt mixed in while you get your wet. So I got 1 cup of hot tap water, yeah. And what I do is I run the water as hot as I can, and then I rinse out the inside of the cup. Now the glass does absorb some heat, so that will bring the water temperature down fairly quickly. So you don't have to worry about killing the yeast. I just do it this way every time and it works. If you've got like a metal cup or something, it'll cool off even quicker, you know. And always, like, just put your pinky in it, okay? Yeah, it's getting cold right now. We're not cold, but I better hurry up. This I absolutely do measure. So 2 teaspoons of sugar, just good old white sugar. Now I use a jar of yeast. If you're going to use packages, you just toss the whole thing in. Just let it rise a little longer to eat up all the yeast. I just put in 2 teaspoons. Because a packet of yeast is 2 1/4 teaspoons, unless you want to be precise and measure out the 2 teaspoons and just chuck the quarter. It'll have a less yeasty flavor if you do that. I don't bother buying pizza yeast. I use either traditional or instant, whatever I can get my hands on, because yeast was a big thing about a year or so ago. You just couldn't. Everybody was home practicing baking. You could hardly even find yeast. It was just brutal. So I took what I got. So I'm just going to let that sit for a couple minutes. And in that time it took to grate the cheese, see, the yeast is ready. You can tell because it's all nice and frothy, bubbly on top. You can even hear it fizzing. Okay, so that's good to go. I put in half first. You can throw in it all, but the reason I do half is because the dough will be dry. That will pick up the sides of the dry stuff from the bowl without having to get in there with a spatula, which can get a little messy. Turn it up 1 notch only if you want to accelerate that a little bit. When you see that neat ring of flour that was there at the beginning start to all basically kind of fall apart like this, that's when you stop the machine and put in the rest. And just let it go on low, like the first setting. Do not turn it up. You don't want stuff sloshing everywhere. And while that's happening, I'm going to get the pizza pan ready. Here's another trick I picked up or came up with during that very long nothing to do period. Because I had a few pizzas stick on me, and I got really tired of it. So what I did is I got this huge... I got this massive roll of tin foil. I think you've seen this before. It doesn't even fit in the screen. Now, you don't have to get one of these. 2 strips of the regular stuff will work quite nicely. Overlapped, no worries. Okay, I just have that, so I use it. So get the parchment on top of that, and I just fold the corners underneath. You can tear them off if you want, but usually they'll stay put. Either works. I could pretend I planned this to teach you something. I didn't, but it's a brand new bag of flour from a different company, and this will vary greatly. So I will use the chance of this disaster to show you how to fix it. And I even put a bit more flour because you're far better to start off with a dry thing that you can add literally 1 teaspoon of water to save it, or have a wet thing where you just do what I'm going to do here and kind of get the hook up and put in maybe 2 tablespoons. And this you want to turn it up fairly quick because you want to see, not so quick, see, that's, it just flies right out of there. No, that's still too wet. So again, basically the same amount, and I'm starting to wonder why that flour was on sale. And it's only 18% humidity in the house, so it's not that, because that can affect it too. If you're making this in a very humid location, be prepared to add more. Now, so let's just check this. And yeah, it's starting to get there. No, it's still a little too wet. Now this is where you have to be super careful, because if you go crazy and just dump all this in, then it's going to get too dry, and then you have to start with water, and oh. Yeah, to get it mixed in, I will turn it up 1 notch, and I'll just show you briefly why you don't go higher, because it will just literally fly out the top, okay? So, that looks like it's all adhering to a mass, which is good, so I'll just let that go for a minute and drag out the Instant Pot. You will notice this is not plugged in, because you don't need it to be. This I can just stop now. And while this is not absolutely required, yes, you will want a piece of parchment if you can lay your hands on it. Plastic wrap will not work. The dough will stick to it miserably, and you will never get it off. I haven't done that, I just know that, because I've seen dough in plastic wrap, and it's just not pretty, okay? So just kind of loosely put some in the bottom. You can oil your hands first if you want, but now the gloves are available again, I prefer this because, you know, it's just less messy. So I'm just going to pull up the camera and hold it so you can see that going in. You don't want to put like a whole bunch. That's probably a couple of teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon. Pull it off the dough hook. Yeah, this is a good consistency where it literally will stick to the dough, it will stick to the gloves, but it will pull off immediately. This is that magic thing you're looking for. See where it does this, but it's like all nice and soft. You don't want pizza dough hard because it won't rise properly. Okay, so kind of ball that up, toss it in the bottom, and I nearly forgot the most important part, put the lid back on. You do not have to worry about the pressure thing or seal it, you know, nothing like that. Just make sure it's a sealed container and then let it rise or else the dough will dry out. Okay, so the moment of truth there, this has been in for, ooh, an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half, and let's see what we got. Ah, there you go. All right. That's a bit bigger than it was when we started. So what you want to do is bring the pot over to the stove, or else it could go everywhere. And if you remember that little ball of dough we stuck in there, you can see that this works quite nicely. And, excuse my reach, it's stuck a little bit. Now, so this is going to do, I've got it kind of on here. Now, this takes a little practice. I've done this for quite a while, and I still have to kind of wing it every time, so don't worry if you get it wrong the first time. As long as it stays on the pizza pan, you're fine. Okay, so kind of with a quick little whoopsie, there, peel that off, and deal with that in the recycling after. Okay, so I got my gloves on because else your hands will stick. And don't worry about losing your bubbles because we're going to do a second rise on this. Yeah, I don't get all artisty and toss it in the air and drop it on the floor and the rest of that stuff. I'm quite content with just spreading it out quietly like this. And because you've got the parchment and the tin foil, when you go to cut it, nothing will stick. So it's worth that extra little step. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to do this evenly. You want to kind of feel the crust as you do it. Like, don't just start pulling, because if you get tears in it, it's really hard to repair right after. So what I do is I like to push this right out. You can kind of roll it with the sides of your hands there, like that at the edges when you get nearly done. And what I like to do is use up basically nearly all the paper. So then you just give that kind of a quick feel with the flat of your hand to make sure that there's no big lumps of dough anywhere, and kind of mush it all out till it's even. And just let that sit there and rise for about a half an hour or so. It's been a half an hour, and I'm going to just zoom here so you can see that, like, that was pancake flat at the beginning, and it's got a nice lift on it now, and it hasn't even risen yet, so that's good. So I always cut this as soon as it gets out of the oven. You can hear that crust. It's cooked all the way through, and it's crispy on the bottom. See? Pizza just slides right around, which is awesome, instead of sticking. If you've ever had a pizza stick to the pan, it is not fun. There we go. Now I'll put a piece on a plate so you can see how it looks all the way through. So you can see it's kind of hard without, it's kind of difficult without eating it, but you can see that the crust is all cooked properly. It's not soggy. I will kind of turn that over so you can see that. Okay, and the sauce is just nice. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.